So one of my students wants to paint the face of this little girl. The problem that she's facing is that the whole face looks very flat. And here is an example what her painting looks like. This is where she started. It was a flat 2D surface, and then she added the facial features to that. And that's the problem why she cannot get that roundness and that sculpting of the face that we are looking for. It's very similar to if I take an egg and I want to paint an egg and I just paint a flat circle. I will demonstrate it just now. It's not the correct base for you to start to add the rest of the features of the face. So let's have a look how we're going to approach this and how we're going to paint an egg and what that will teach us in portrait painting. Let me start the demonstration by painting an egg. So if we have a look at this egg, it's round, very similar to a head, the shape of a head. So if I want to paint that egg and I decide to just do the whole egg one color. So this is what it looks like. If I paint an egg and I only use one tonal value and one shape to paint the egg with. If I, on the other hand, have my different tonal values, the darkest will be on this side if the light's coming from this side. So I'll paint the dark area of my egg. And first I'll just do rough planes with the different tonal values, and then I'll soften the edges to get that roundness and that sculpting effect. So that's the dark. Then we'll switch to this side to a tone lighter than that because we want to give it that round feeling of the egg, and same as the head. So there's that tone, and now I'm going to add the lighter value here. My third value, I'm just working with 4 tonal values and 4 planes at present. You can use more if you want. I just want to clean my brush for the highlight, get a clean brush for the highlight, and then we'll have the lightest light there. For the shadow, for the sake of the exercise, I'm going to use sort of a grey palette. So this is a raw umber that I have here against the egg because it's lying on a surface, so there's going to be a shadow depending which direction the light comes from, and I've got the light shining from here. So the shadow will also start dark against the subject, and then it will be more light. And then light. Now if I take a clean brush and I just soften the edges, and then we start with the shadow, just softening the edges. You immediately see now I have a 3-dimensional round shape which I can work with, and that's the exact same mistake that the student was making. She didn't prepare a 3-dimensional surface on which she could continue to add facial features. And now you can see the difference between this egg and this egg. It's more sculpted, this one. So now she can start to add whatever features she wants to have on there. So let's continue on how to use this approach to improve on the face. Let's see what happens if we approach the girl the same way. If we only have one tonal value for her, and now let's see what happens if we do her face on the second drawing, but we add different tonal values and darker tonal values. So because she's fair skinned, I'll use this tonal value as the darker one. And what also help is if you use a bigger brush than you think you should. If you use too small a brush, you won't get the desired effect. There's one area where it's a little bit darker, maybe it's below the ear and in the neck there. So I'll just go a little bit darker there. I can already see that I'm sculpting her and that there's shape where it lacked in the previous one and also in the egg when we did the egg earlier. I can already see how she's becoming three-dimensional and how this is an improvement on the flat surface only by adding the tonal values and get that correct before you get to the detail of the face. Now if I add the dark to the nose there, this is when I add the dark to the nose here. It's a complete different feel that I get. It's also a little bit of dark there. Where the nose is. So already, to me, I can see a huge difference. Let's just put the darkest dark here where the ear, by the ear. Maybe let's put some eyebrows for her. She's a youngster, so I don't want to go too dark. Let me now use a brush to soften what we've got here. So now if I soften the edges, just keep the brush clean that you soften with. And only on the edges where the planes meet, it's the only place where you soften. You don't soften the whole thing because then everything will just be the same color if you soften all over. Now you can see what the difference is. If you start it off like here and you would now like to put that dark in, it's really not going to be flattering. Because let's do a little bit on the eyes. Not much because the eyes isn't that visible. we can do something about the lip. I have a Venetian red here, which I really love using for lips because it's just not a pink, not as bright as you would imagine a lip color, but it does make a little difference on what you do on the lips. First, just have that little darkness there. Let's do a little bit on the arms while we're busy with that. So it will be a lighter color here. Okay, so I think that sort of concludes and proves my lesson that you have to divide your face into planes to be able to sculpt it. To have that, if you have the darks where the darks need to be, it gives that effect of roundness, and you have a better canvas to add your eyes and your facial features on than when you have a flat two-dimensional surface. So that, I hope that will help you, and also my student who is having difficulty with this. I will continue with this and add some hair. So this little girl has got blonde hair. What I like to use when I do blonde hair is a buff titanium. I'll use a little bit of burnt umber for the darker darks, and I have a Naples yellow which I will brighten it up with. So let's see if we start with the darkest dark, which will be here in the neck. Can you see if I mix the buff titanium with a little bit of this brown before I go to blonde? And I try to work into the direction where the hair will grow or will be fastened on the little face. And now I can add a little bit of color. So this is my Naples yellow, and I can even bring white in, a sort of blonde shade, which is not dull. And I can always come back with a little bit of the Naples yellow again if I feel that it's not vibrant enough. So I started quite dark, and where I ended isn't as dark. I just want to get a little bit of darkness here in the fold of the bun, because it is a shadow there and not the true color of her hair. That concludes our demonstration on how to approach a portrait. This is not a full tutorial on how to do a portrait painting. It is only a way of approaching your portrait painting, which I think you will find helpful on how we first had our two-dimensional subject and then how we change it to three-dimensional and then added our facial features and the success that you get when you approach it with different planes and different tonal values. Thank you for watching, and please remember, if there's any questions you have, please email me and I'll gladly answer that. Thank you. Goodbye.